I know many of you, some of you I do not know. I've tried to shake most of your hands. Sorry if I have not yet. But if you don't know who I am, my name is Jonathan Ingram, and I have the privilege of being the director of Faith Co-op. We are a nonprofit here in Chattanooga, and our mission is to awaken Christians to how their faith brings daily purpose. And the main area we focus on is what you do 40 to 60 hours a week of your life. Go to a job. Some of you own businesses. Some of you work for large companies. Some of you are a part of nonprofits. Some of you have the hardest job and the most hours job of being a stay-at-home mom or dad. All of you go to jobs. All of you have a vocation. And we hold the fact that God cares about all of our lives, not just my soul, not just when I'm reading the Bible or when I'm at church on Sunday, but He cares about all of my life, including these hours that I spend at my job. I actually go to my job more time than I spend with my kids at night. Think about the amount of time you are doing a job, and we hope God cares about these hours of our life. And so at Faith Co-op, we do a lot of different things to host opportunities for Christians around town to gather and to think and to imagine together about what it might look like to honor God in the places He calls you to be. We have two different fellowships, one's for recent college graduates. We have some alumni of that program in the room today. We have a fellowship for established professionals called the Main and Market Fellows. There's info on the back table. That meets for 9 months. We have some alumni of that today. I don't know if we have any current participants of that program here today. We do small groups for faith around faith-driven investors and faith-driven entrepreneurs to gather to think about how their faith informs the things they build and the things they invest in. We have a class called Faith and Work 101 that churches and businesses will hire us to come in and do a base theology of faith and work for their employees or for their congregants at their church. And then we have a podcast called the Weekday Saints Podcast. So if you are interested in hearing amazing stories of how God is showing up in people's lives that you oftentimes would miss, the auto mechanic down the road, the barber, the Weekday Saints Podcast is designed for you to hear those types of stories about how God's working all around you all the time. And then you're at our Lunch and Learn series. We put on 6 of these events a year, and we theme them out, and we're so thankful to have you to be in our second of 6-part series on trusting God in the workplace. If you have been involved in a church or you've been a Christian for any length of time, the phrase trusting God comes up a lot. When things go bad, say, well, just trust in God. It's one of those phrases we throw around all the time. And it can be really comforting. It can also be like, well, what does that actually look like? What does it look like to trust God? And so the events that we're putting on in this series are designed to help you begin to imagine what it actually means to trust God. What does it mean in the job I go to and in the work I'm called to do and in situations that arise that I'm putting my trust in someone bigger than me? And I hope that idea resonates with you, that God cares about you enough that you can trust Him. But what I hope in today's event and the event of other events we do, and you're welcome at all of those, is that you get to hear other Christians in town, just like you, that are on the grind, that have thought through what it might look like to trust God in their context. And your context isn't going to be the same. Your context is not the same. But what it would look like for you to take the stories and truths that they're learning and say, what does that mean for me in the places God's got me to be? As we were planning this event, and you'll get to meet these folks in a minute, one of the things that was very true to me was these were not the only 3 people that I could ask come talk about what it meant to trust God when things feel out of your control. How many of you have something in your life right now that feels out of your control? I have 5 kids that all feel out of my control. You all have something in your life that you wish you could grasp your hand around, and sometimes it probably feels like your hand's being ripped open. And so today, as we have these 3 folks to be a representative of all the stories in the room, I hope that you get a chance to hear from them and learn from them, but also it awakens something in you for the things that you're called to be. So really thankful to have you here and to be with us, to be a part of these conversations. And I'm really thankful for the Generosity Trust who are helping put this event on. And I'd love for someone to come up. Lindsay's going to come up and tell you a little bit about the Generosity Trust, who has helped sponsor this event to make this happen today.
Good afternoon. My name is Fergie Gutierrez. I work at the Generosity Trust since last November, and we're so excited to be here. The really cool thing I get to do is I get to work with some giving collaborations, which are they're groups of givers, of people of different ages, different backgrounds who come together and say, I want to learn to be generous in community. Oftentimes people come into these groups saying, I want to give, but I don't know where to give. I don't know who's doing what around this city. So one of our groups is the Young Givers. So Morgan and Cara have been part of our Young Givers. So we're here at Solidarity rooting along with them. They've been faithful members. And last year, the Young Givers actually gave a small grant to Faith Co-op. I think it was last December. So every month, you can participate for $50 a month. As a family, as a couple, as an individual, people get in. And then quarterly, we review grant requests. We choose different nonprofits from around the city. They come to a pitch style event. So, not quite Shark Tank like. We're nice for them now. But going to come pitch their ideas. And so collectively, the group and decides, hey, this is where we want our money to go. So I'd love to share more about that. If you're a part of the M Givers and you feel like letting us know, you can raise your hand. You don't have to. Ooh, there's a good number of it here. Yes. So we're here representing them, and we're so happy to support Cara and Morgan and the Generosity Trust. Just real quick, what we do, our legal name is the Chattanooga Christian Community Foundation, and our mission is to empower Christian generosity. So we work with donors all over the city and all over the region, helping them to streamline their giving, figure out how to give. And one of the most exciting things for me is to see how much Christians actually give. We have donor privacy. We can't reveal all this data, but on the back end, we see the 800 plus fund holders who give in and who get out. So Chattanooga is a very generous city, and come talk to us afterwards. Maria, my coworker over there, she's also happy to answer questions, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for being a part of this, and thank you everyone for being here. If my speakers could come up and join me on stage, we'll go ahead and get going. Morgan, you and I can share this mic. Cool. Can we give them a hand for being here with us? Well, Morgan, Autumn, Cara, thank you so much for being a part. Before we jump into our talk, I wanted you all to be able to introduce yourselves. We're going to talk a little bit about your story and part of it, but not all of your story. Who are you all? Tell us about who you are, where you're from, what you do for work. Are you from Chattanooga? Do you have a family? Anything like that?
Cool. Thank you so much, Morgan Maclellan. I'm honored to be here. Very thankful, very nervous. I'm like, it's happening right now. So Macaulay, University of Georgia, Atlanta for 10 years. Married my wife, Lisa, over here. We have 4 kids. And 7, 5, 3, and 1. So it's crazy, it's fun, it's exciting, it's exhausting. And I'm so thankful to be back in Chattanooga, where my family's been from a long time. I work at UBS in wealth management, so planning with families, investing, walking alongside people. And I'm a 6th-generation trustee of the Maclellan Foundation. I'm also so excited Lisa's here. I've learned like 2 things recently. She keeps me humble. She said, what are you talking about again? Is it failure? And I was like, failure? Is that my subject matter expertise? We laughed a lot about that. And she said, if we're wearing name tags, it's not a date. So we'll have to get some more time together.
Hey, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Okay. My name's Autumn, Autumn Powell. Powell's a new addition. I recently got married this summer to Michael. So that was the best thing to happen out of 2025 for sure. But I've been in Chattanooga for 8 years. Moved here after college, so have started and built my early career here. Have had a lot of twists and turns. I really do love the small to medium-sized business space. I've always been fascinated by working cross-functionally and in dynamic environments, and really just like working in small teams because you have a decent amount of exposure and responsibility that you get to take on, and I've always loved that challenge. And so I've crossed industries a few times, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But I'm currently working at Sage Hill Investors. It's a family office in Chattanooga. It's a new gig, so I'm only less than a month in. Wish me luck. But it's awesome. It's a family office dedicated to stewarding the wealth of the Grizzard family. So we manage a investment portfolio across public, private, and real estate sectors, and I get to be a part of the special project side.
Hi, I am Cara Hicks, and I wrote stuff down so I can try to not talk too long. Thank you. And I always get stickers stuck in my hair, so thank you. It takes a village. I currently serve as the founder and chief empowerment officer of the Momentum Network. Shout out to my team members here. Whoop, whoop. It is a nonprofit ministry in Chattanooga. I'm also a proud mom of 5 incredible kids who are range in age from 8 to 21. I have been married for 16 years, and those kiddos keep me humble for sure. As I just turned 41, apparently that's Sigma, so I'm going to hold on to any coolness that I can keep. My career journey has been a series of planning, praying, and then responding to opportunities that I didn't expect. I fell into real estate in college, needing to solve my own housing crisis. Through that work, I received mentorship and learned the value of both cash flow and community. I actually landed my next job on the side of the road when I was driving down and I asked for directions, and then a job after that, an employer recruited me after learning that I was skipping an epidural because it was too expensive, and I was paying cash for childbirth. So she recruited me to come and get some really great insurance. Shout out to EPB. So all of these things, many are the plans of a man's heart, but also just looking for where God shows up and how we respond to that. I am a local girl. I was born and raised in the 706, and I could not wait to leave after high school. Have one of my high school friends here as well, but after college, I loved seeing what God was doing in this city. I could not wait to come back as well. So it feels really amazing to be here amongst you guys, and also go Dogs as a Georgia graduate. Love that we're here in solidarity as well.
Well, if you've been at a lunch and learn before, usually I have like broad questions that we ask each of them to just kind of go down the line and answer. But as we were going through our stories, I just felt like it would make more sense to be more pointed to them, to allow them to tell their story, to kind of say how they got to a place that we're sitting here today, that they are willing to share some of their stories. So, Morgan, I'm going to start with you, but you mentioned you weren't living in Chattanooga. This is a new thing coming back. Tell us about kind of where you were living and what your career looked like back in 2019. And then I know, and part of you being here, plans change quickly. And so I'd love for you to share just about what that was like, where you were settled, where you were, what you were doing, what it meant like for plans to change, and kind of how that hit you emotionally and spiritually.
Cool. Yeah, I'll step back a little bit further. So came out of college, I did insurance. I wasn't very creative. I'm like, I think it worked for our family in the past, so I'm going to stick with that. I got out of that, and I wanted to do something different. I was inspired by my dad, his entrepreneurial success. I was inspired by my forefathers, like they created, they led, they built, they gave, and I wanted to impact my community, lead a team. I wanted to grow myself, and then wanted to create opportunities for people to grow as well, use my gifts, have fun, make a profit, be successful. Those were kind of the things that inspired me. I opened a pizza franchise in Atlanta, and true what Kathy said, you can't change your community if you don't make a profit. So I think that's kind of like an essential part of my whole plan. So 2015, opened it up. There were so many challenges out of the gate, but God blessed it. We were profitable. We set sales records. We gave 1,000 free pizzas to hungry kids in our community. We're really proud of that. We had a great culture. And so we said, let's open a second store. Let's grow our family at the same time. I think it's time to do that. So open a second store, baby is born, emergency C-section, like 3 weeks later. GM disappears in the middle of the night. The first month, the parking deck cracks and sinks and shuts down and closes for 8 months. The other GM is fired for cause a week later. So like a 3-month-old baby. My wife, my business partner, is now kind of out of the everyday picture. It was extremely stressful. And so things went, they changed overnight. And I was under so much stress, and I had that on my own shoulders in a big way, like, oh, I've failed here, I've messed up here, I have led it here. There's no one but me who's responsible for this. So it was a tough time for sure. And you're working 90-hour work weeks, and you gotta show up. Weekend starts at 7 p.m. on Sunday, show up at 7 a.m. on Monday, excited, keep the mask up, keep smiling, encourage the team. And in June 2019, my dad gave me a book, Henry Cloud, Necessary Endings. So he talks about, maybe y'all have heard it, I got to meet him on Monday, it's so exciting. So people have a habit, addiction, a relationship, a business. They ride it to the grave, bankruptcy, and they don't make this decision, hey, maybe I need to make a change. Maybe I can't make a change on my own. I need to do something painful, necessary, end it. So we said, God, let's sell the first restaurant and simplify our lives. Landlord blocked our sale the week of. We kind of closed the restaurant in the night. Our pizza baby, this dream we had was had to axe the pizza baby. That was tough. And so we kind of thought, hey, we want our family to grow, and right now would be an awful time to grow the family, but if we look forward, if we're forward 20 years looking backwards, it would be a great time. So we found out baby number 2 was coming in November 2019, and that led us, what's our 5-year plan look like? Are we going to be here? Are we doubling down in what we're doing, or are we going to do something else? And God guided us through these conversations, through family, through friends, sell the business, move back to Chattanooga, and something is going to work out. We found a buyer December 2019. We ended up selling the pizza restaurant 6 hours before they shut every restaurant down for in-store dining in Atlanta. Found a house the next day, moved here within 3 weeks later. I had a baby in July 2020. His name is William. He's 5 years old now, so our 5-year plan baby is 5 years old. And a little extra icing on the cake, he became a believer in Jesus last week. So it's wow. So we get to look back and see this path that was unclear, completely unclear at the time, and then got to see God's provision during that time.
That's good. That's great.
Yeah.
Let me see that real quick. There's a lot there, and the emotions of a business and family were all kind of wrapped together, and we'll get more of your story here in a few minutes. Autumn, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your vocational journey. You hinted at some of the things. You hinted at things you enjoy. I think it'd been clear if you were listening, she is a planner, and she is someone who likes to think about the future and have a strategic direction and know where she's going. So talk about what it was like to create plans, and then have there ever been times those plans didn't work out the way that you thought? How did you respond to that?
Sure. So I'll start with, I was 2 to 3 years into my first job out of college at a growing Chattanooga startup. And there was a pretty secure path forward in terms of a future career at this company. And it seemed pretty comfortable, but I knew that it wasn't where I needed to be. It wasn't exciting me. And so I wanted to take a leap of faith and kind of consider what is the path forward. And so I partnered with a minister who is specialized in vocational training and worked with him over the course of 2 days to kind of go through some discernment exercises and reflection work. And that was a really, really meaningful experience. This was at age 25. And so that planning side of me really kicked in. And I got some really great outputs out of that work, including core values that I could be guided by in big decisions in the future, and a life purpose statement. And that life purpose statement the aim was 10 words or less. Put in kind of what are you about? Who are you? And I'll share it with you. It's to prayerfully embody integrity and originality, joyfully testifying to God's goodness. And each word has a lot of meaning to me, and it's power-packed. And I knew it then that it was significant, and I knew it would really help me transition to make this move. But I wasn't ready for it to help me transition 5 times over the next 5 years. So I've held 5 different positions over the course of the last 5 years, and that has been a challenge. So I can't go into all the details. We don't have necessarily the time to tell the whole story, but I will highlight a couple things for the purpose of this conversation. So I think, being interested in the entrepreneurial space, I've often taken jobs that don't have a precedent. So you step in, and I've created my own job description on multiple occasions. I've actually never gotten a job through a traditional application process. I've only ever gone through networking. It's just my style, but it has had, it also comes with trade-offs. And so when you don't have a precedent in a role, it can oftentimes shift. And that's happened a few times of stepping in with an intention, and then the environment is so dynamic that you're just firefighting or making do. And so that's been a theme, but I've also seen some more of the uglier, like messier sides of business, where you have some really hard decisions, and it comes to be some really difficult personnel moments. And I have been given, in the smaller business world, more responsibility than you think my experience would probably allow for, but you grow into it and you make mistakes. And I've seen multiple different HR incidents and been a victim of one that had pretty severe personal consequences for me. And then I will tell kind of one highlight beyond just, oh gosh, let me highlight that I've also had, as you would probably assume, multiple seasons of unemployment across those 5 years. So when you reckon with what is my identity, what is my purpose or my value when I'm not working, like it shakes you to my core, it has. And so I've really had to wrestle with, like, when I'm not working, what is my purpose? And then the one highlight that I would like to make, I think that has a decent amount of gravity, is I stepped out of the first job into a new one, was feeling really good about it. It was a great fit. And then until it wasn't, the environment was not suitable for me, needed to exit quickly, so I did. And stepped into a season of stillness and reflection with some mentors, and was so grateful to find an introduction to Alderman Enterprises. It's a investment firm locally. So I was introduced to an individual, Chris Wright, who is the operating partner of Alderman Enterprises. And so got to work with Chris on building out a job that had a trajectory that I was so excited about. So a path where I would be supporting him as he built the portfolio. And you're gonna have to bear with me here, but so I started that job, and 3 weeks later, I walked into the office and learned that he was shot and killed the night before. So I can never not get emotional about this, but it was a moment in which I not only lost a person who I already deeply respected and was so excited to work for, but I also lost a job and a vision and a hope that I'd built up. And so it was devastating, and still is. This is pretty recent, 2 years ago. And I've had to travel that journey of just grief interwoven with my professional life, and had to transition twice since then. So it is, what I will say is that life purpose statement, it has meant a lot to me, and that has been kind of an anchor to me in the hardest moments, in the darkest days. What does integrity mean? What does it look like to not back down and stay course and stay true to your values? What does it mean to speak up, when it's so much easier to take the shortcut and just be silent? Or originality, embracing that this is not a linear path for me, and just being able to get curious and walk with God and seek Him continually in a path that has had its ups and downs. So I think that's probably a decent picture of the last 5 years for me.
Thank you for sharing that and for your vulnerability. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Cara, I'd love for you to share, I know your work with the Momentum Network is directly related to your personal story. Would you be willing to share some of the unforeseen circumstances you've endured in your life? And what does your relationship with God look like in these times of hard things and things you weren't expecting?
Yeah, so does anyone remember being 18 and having big dreams and your whole life planned out ahead? Yeah, so I definitely did, and I type A, straight A student, love making plans, have my planner in my bag, have it on my phone, and being raised by a single mom who had to work 2 and 3 jobs at different times, she really stressed the importance of education. She would come home from a factory, start cutting hair in the kitchen, and say, "You are going to college." And so when I turned 18 and was ready to go off to college, I had a full ride to University of Georgia the same week that I was giving my salutatorian speech and sharing my favorite Bible verse that we memorized for cheerleading that year. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. I loved that. I felt like it brought us some victories. I had no idea about how the context of that verse would resonate. The same week I was given that salutatorian speech encouraging people that Jesus gives us strength, I was sitting alone in an abortion clinic, except for the counselor that was there telling me that unless I terminated my pregnancy, I would be a failure and I would not be able to go off to college. I would end up in poverty, like the story that I shared with her about my own family, and just felt like I can't do this. I was literally scared to death. I love Jesus. I was a part of a Bible study group, and yet I felt scared to death. And at that time, I literally feel like the Lord lifted me out of that clinic. And baby step by baby step, I went from having everything planned out to not knowing what to do and having to depend on others, which was very uncomfortable for me. I did not like asking for help. I liked to put on a show and lead, but I did not like walking around with a big belly on the University of Georgia campus. I was supposed to be in a sorority. But thankfully, God provided family and graduate housing on the campus of UGA. He moved me next door to a girl named Becca who had a baby in college, and most of the other students were international students, which was cool on its own. But at 18, I was desperate for somebody who looked like me, and so she was one of those first answered prayers. And God continued to not only provide for me financially and spiritually, he literally met me in so many ways. And one of the stories I think about is, again, was too prideful to ask for help. I remember sitting on my couch sobbing because I was like, I have one meal left in my fridge. This wasn't back in the day when I'm posting on social media or whatever, and there was no GoFundMe, but I was sitting there and I hear a knock at my door, and a girl from my hometown said, hey, my aunt came to visit today and she randomly told me to give you this $100. And so just over and over and over again, miracles happened. Becca taught me how to get in my Bible and read God's word for myself, to learn about him and who he was as a father. And so while I was very familiar with, shout out Beth Moore devotionals, and other, I love the Lord, I love sermons, I really hadn't been discipled to the depth of being desperate for Jesus, being desperate for the grace that he provides. So that journey for me in college, I ended up graduating with my little guy by my side. But as I alluded to earlier, I fell into real estate because one dumb night when I wasn't walking with Jesus, I negotiated a rental house with my buddy Patrick, who rented me this sweet downtown apartment for super cheap. And when his dad found out, he was like, nope, you cannot do that. And so I was essentially homeless. Everything packed up in a U-Haul, including my car seat, my baby, dragging my car behind me, and a pup. I ended up having to negotiate a rental house. And if you are familiar with campus housing, it's super expensive in Athens, Georgia. And I also said, and I know that I need to make 3 times the amount of income, so by the end of today, I will have a job. And she called me back after I left and said, hey, you're a pretty good negotiator. You want to come work for us? And so that's how my career in real estate happened. So I look back at the times, I'll share a little bit more about my journey later, but I look at the times where I literally was like, this is the end. I cannot move past this. I'm so ashamed. Or how did life end up this way? And God continued to step in. So I walked with him super closely the first couple of years of college, but then the last couple of years of college, I did not. My faith was very much hinged on outcomes, and my dad was killed. A lot of stuff happened, and I walked away from Jesus, but he never walked away from me. And I look back and see his faithfulness when I was not faithful. And so now I get to use that personal experience with my work, with the Momentum Network. I also want to say that, becoming a mom at 19, I had never experienced the love of Jesus Christ as a father. I grew up mostly without a father in my life. And so the really hard thing of growing up without a father turned into a really beautiful thing when I became a parent, and I was like, holy smokes, could your heart grow any bigger? This kid, I never planned on having any kids. Now I have 5. But it was a heart explosion. And if you guys, you might have that experience, but Jax became my motivation and changed my life for the better when the world said he was going to ruin it. God continued to work in incredible ways through that hard and holy season. And I look back now and see that nothing was wasted. Every difficult experience became firsthand knowledge and empathy that I now draw on every day. I never planned to start a nonprofit, which I get to do now, but through a series of convictions, prayers, and wise conversations, I came to believe that not responding to God's call, which was also not in the Dave Ramsey plan that I had, I actually talked to Clark Howard personally and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. He said, don't. And yet I prayed about it, and shout out to the Generosity Trust. Jim Barber was like, I think God's in this. And so prayers, connections, convictions led to the start of what has been over the last 11 years, a calling that I feel so incredibly grateful to get to do, where I've met not only incredibly amazing, resilient moms who choose life and continue to move on forward, or single moms who have 3-4 kids who are like, I need a degree, so I'm gonna work 2 jobs, or I'm gonna do this thing. I've met so many of you through this process as well, who've shown up and said, what do you need? How can I serve? How can I help? And so what began as a deeply personal faith-building season has become a faith-building career. Today, I have the privilege of leading Momentum Network, where we get to encourage and empower the estimated 1 in 5 female college students who experience unplanned pregnancies and single moms who need a degree to break cycles of poverty by providing hope, housing, childcare, and mentor coaching to help both her and her babies build a better future.
Pretty good, pretty good. Thank you for sharing that, Cara. Well, Morgan, in the midst of you realizing you were going to need to sell the business, that's a lot to process, I know. What did it look like for you to sense God's presence during that time? And were there any truths from Scripture that you held on to as you were making these big decisions for your family?
So 2018, I joined Buckhead Church Leadership Development Group, and it was this season I was overwhelmed, I was exhausted. I'm like, I don't have time for this, but it sounds like exactly what I needed. And we had 2 senior leaders and 5 of us reading Scripture, challenging each other, being honest and vulnerable with each other, writing book reports on great books. So in that season, I learned to, am I looking at my foundation as myself and my ability, and I can get stuff done and I'm successful? And is it anchored in myself? And I was in the midst of well, that's clearly not working. I'm terrified. Feel like everything's falling apart. And during that season, it's well, if I look to God as my foundation, and I believe that He has a good plan for my life, and He's in control of everything, and I don't have to worry, and He loves me. I don't have to worry in that season. And that was transformational. I had a coworker that was like, how are you not so upset and falling apart when this business is failing? And I got to walk through that element of faith with her, which was really inspiring and comforting. So I think that's so important to surround ourselves with believers who believe the best in us. And in that season, I remember we're reading the Bible, and I didn't have a good Bible habit before that. And I've since strengthened that up a lot, and it means a lot to me to read the Bible every morning. But I'm going through James, and James 4:13 and 5, and I'll paraphrase, and he says, today or tomorrow we're going to go to a certain town, we're going to stay there for a year, and we're going to do business, and we're going to make a profit. And how do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? And you're just a fog, you're just a mist. We don't even know if it's going to rain tomorrow. What you should really say is, Lord willing. Otherwise, you're boasting about things you don't know. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, the Bible talks about going to a different town and making a profit? That is so relevant to my life today and what I'm trying to do. And so I can go here and actually find out things that are so relevant and real and speaking into the things I'm doing in this moment today. It was shocking for me. And now since Calvary has this read the Bible in a year app, and I tried to let's start in Genesis and go, and didn't work. But I'm a year and a half into I read the Bible last year by chipping away a little bit at a time, and I'm always so encouraged by how it just pours in good things into your life in the morning, into my life. I found that Christ escapes into the wilderness for solitude and prayer, and that meant a lot to me, and that was something that I've incorporated more this year. But like I remember everything's falling apart in the restaurant, and I like go across the street to Nordstrom and sit on like the second floor and just sit down in a chair, and I pray this like, I found a prayer online, this like big, bold spiritual protection prayer, like armor of God. And it was just like kind of, I was distressed, I was reaching out to God. So little things like that were tremendously helpful. And Lisa reminded me that that's not what retail therapy is. It's something else.
I think it's a better version.
Yeah, it's a better version. Like this year, I've gone to Pray Chattanooga twice, and like 30-minute intense prayer sessions, and I walk away like, how am I not doing this every single day to uplift me? And then really cry out to God for what I want. And in those seasons, that season and seasons this year with the kids, it's like you're spinning plates. You're keeping all these thoughts up in your mind, all these problems you have to solve, all these requests that are coming your way. And you start to feel like Wile E. Coyote off the cliff, and you realize you're like, oh my gosh, I'm way overextended, I'm overwhelmed. But I think God uses those seasons, like we grow in the friction. He uses those seasons to grow us, but often we're a little bit overextended. But I've always gone back to this, and it's so simple, I share it with my kids. God's in control of everything. He has a good plan for our life, and he loves us, so we don't have to worry. And like that's been a thing I've repeated that's brought me so much encouragement over the years, hopefully still okay. In that journey, I went without drinking for like 8 months, and that was really good for me. And again, I'm 3 years in and not drinking, and I think it goes back to like the daily habits. Are the daily habits uplifting us? August 3 years ago, Lisa said, like, let's do dry August. I'm like, that's terrible. It's pool season. Like, we hang out with our friends. Are you sure you want to do this? And I wake up in the morning, my mind is clear. I'm not walking in the office and my coworker's like, you look pretty rough today. I'm like, oh, thank you. But it's like, okay, so I have a chance. I wake up with a clear mind. I read the Bible, I exercise. God speaks to my heart and he uplifts me. And the alternative that I was experiencing was, it's such a stressful week. I'm going to drink a little bit more on Sunday night. I'm going to wake up tired. I'll feel better Tuesday afternoon. It's trivia night on Wednesday. It's pint night on Thursday. We're going back out with friends on Friday or Saturday. And guess what? I'm really stressed out and tired on Sunday. And it was this cycle that was really cool in the marketing presentation of the most interesting man in the world. But like, that's not the reality. You know? And then I had one last thing. My friend, like this season I was thinking like I failed in so many ways and I carried that on my shoulders. But I think we got to remind ourselves that God has a plan for our life. Like I texted my friend like how I failed. And he said, don't think about it as how you failed. You had a positive impact in my life. You had a positive impact in your community. And I really like how he said, you accomplished a phase of life that God planned for you, and it might not feel great at the time, but you know that's part of your story.
That's really good. I love that, Morgan. You talked about a Nordstrom, Pray Chattanooga, your morning quiet time, and a text message, and how the Lord met you in all those places. I just love that because that's like you're getting this picture of how God's meeting you wherever you're at. That it's not He's over there waiting for me to get to Him, but He came and found you. So Nordstrom can be a holy place, y'all. Autumn, that's what you shared with us about what happened 2 years ago. That's a massive thing that, as you said, it's still part of your grief process now. But I'd love, as we are thinking specifically about trusting God when things feel out of our control, what has it been like to navigate that grief personally in a relationship, the grief of a loss of a vocational path, and what does it look like to grieve that while at the same time moving forward?
Yeah.
What's that look like for you?
Yeah, I think of a few things that have been really instrumental and still are. One of which I have found a lot of comfort in ancient prayers and liturgical prayers. So I don't think I'm probably the only one, but I have a few volumes of the Every Moment Holy. And those, if you're not familiar, it's different publications of prayers that are all about kind of like meeting you in your day. So everywhere from before you start an interview, here's a prayer to center yourself on, or when you have bad news, or when you're changing the diaper of your child. Like, it meets you in so many different moments. And I found that to be really beautiful, as well as ancient prayers. So prayers from forefathers of the faith. I truly believe the Thomas Merton prayer and the welcome prayer have become like my anthem from the past few years. They're like a 1 or 2 minute, it takes 1 or 2 minutes to listen to or read, and it's kind of like a breath prayer, where when I don't have the words to say and I have no idea how to approach God in this devastation, those words lifted me up. So that's one. And then I'd also say I have found the lament to be a powerful form of worship. And I can't say that I've ever experienced it before, before going through what I've gone through the past few years, but I really deeply value lament now. I've found that approaching God with all forms of where you are, with your anger, with your confusion, with your frustration, and doing so without abandon, and just bringing your emotions to God and then letting Him turn you in your prayer life back to Him, is a really powerful thing to witness. And it's helped retrain my prayer life to be more honest with God. And then it's just a powerful thing when you're headed to work in the car and you're playing worship songs and you have no idea what is like blitz is about to happen at work, but you're like starting your day that way and you're worshiping as you're suffering. It is I found it to be a really transformative thing for me. And then finally, I would, with so much confidence, say Faith Co-op. And the resources that this organization has offered me has been really great. I've been a part of the Faith-Driven Entrepreneur cohort and the Main and Market program, the 9-month program that they do here, and found such a community around this intersection of faith and work. And so people who also care about this topic, who want to explore what their vocation means, and also be better equipped to handle what's coming at them every day in their 9 to 5. And I've really been blessed by the community that I've built in the wider church network, but specifically through Faith Co-op. So I just want to say a big thanks to Ralston, Mel, and Jonathan for nourishing this community and fostering it.
I told her she did not have to say that. But what I want people to hear in that is one of the pillars for you was other people. Like in an unknown moment, having people that could be a pillar when you didn't feel like you could be one. And times of prayer that you and I have had and you've had with others, I know. So as I think about that, when I think about wherever you're at, who is walking with you in this season of unknown is such an important thing. So thanks for sharing that. Well, Cara, you shared a lot about your journey, and God has got you to where you're at. But what does it look like for you to hope? What does hope look like for you as you continue to serve the Lord in your work and in your family? And how has trust in God, how's your trust in God grown? You talked about seasons where it's been up and down. What's it been look like for it to grow in this season of work where God has you right now?
Yeah, so I am going to stick to the script for this part, but I am so incredibly grateful to get to do the work that I get to do, and it does feel like a redemptive ending to that hard season as a former single mom, but I was not prepared for how challenging obedience can be. When I started Momentum in 2014, I thought saying yes to God meant that He'd make the path clear. I had watched Him provide for me miraculously. I'd gone through challenges before too, but this was ministry, and had some people encouraging me, if it's God, the doors will open. But that was not necessarily how it worked out for me. It took 5 long years to open up our Scholar Village housing campus, a project I worked on relentlessly and felt like I faced a lot of adversity on. And then we finally opened in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. So while we were open and much needed for moms and babies during that time, we were also in survival mode, facing constant challenges, including struggling to reach students facing unplanned pregnancy who were no longer physically on campus. If you've been on a university campus lately, they don't love talking about choosing life necessarily. So then in 2021, everything seemed to shift. We, little small nonprofit in Chattanooga, Tennessee, got a random email late on a Friday night, and I thought it was a scam up until the day before, but we were featured on the National Today Show, which was really fun. and then Focus on the Family invited me to share our story nationally. But the week we were supposed to fly out, my son, the one whose life who had inspired our entire mission, took his last breath. That was not how the story was supposed to happen. When I walked out of that abortion clinic, I felt like God audibly said to me, "Get up and I will take care of you both." But he has. Losing Jax changed everything. What I didn't expect was for my faith to deepen and for my passion to grow stronger. The same community of moms I had walked with were part of the community that carried me. And one of them is sitting in front. When someone who wasn't a believer asked, "How can you still trust God after this?" Where else would I go? I remember how I once tried to grieve without him after losing my dad in college, and I knew this time I could not survive this way or that way. I've clung to Jesus for dear life, and he has held me faithfully. I wouldn't have asked for a heavenward perspective, but now I have a completely different perspective. I believe his plans are still to give us a hope and a future. I believe I see the goodness every day in the land of the living, the goodness of the Lord. And even when we don't understand, and because I cherish every single day I had with Jax, I'm even more passionate about doing the work God has called me to do, helping others see that every little life, no matter how short, has both earthly and eternal value. And watching God show up, watching his people show up day in and day out in my life over these past 4 years has continued to deepen my trust in Jesus. He is faithful. He is our hope. Heaven is so much better. We live for a greater country. And finding hope in his word, finding hope in, I know it's silly, but I see rainbows in the sky like every week. And it's not that I think that's my child. That's not what I think. I just see God's beauty that I didn't see before, and beauty that exists within every day in ordinary moments, things that when I'm in a rush and I'm headed on to something and somebody stops me and I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to be late for this next meeting." Sorry, guys, my team's here. I try to not roll past what the Spirit has for me, and so I don't think I did that as much before. And so, and also just surrendering. You know, when you are face down screaming at God because he can handle it, lament looks a little different, or it did for the first few weeks in my van after I dropped off my kids. I felt like he said, give it all to me. Give me everything. I can handle it. And so, you know, I used to think David was a little maybe bipolar. Now I'm like, I get it. You're my God. I'm so grateful that the Lord can handle our highs, can handle our lows. He's with us on the mountaintops when we often forget, but I've seen him so brightly in the valleys. And so, yeah.
Thank you so much. I love how hope caused you to slow down. And slowing down meant you could see him working in new ways.
Yeah.
And it's funny you bring up David. Lament, a third of the Psalms, the book that we think of as the praise and worship Psalms, a third of those Psalms are lament Psalms. And if you go back and read some of those, they're pretty honest with God. Like, where the heck are you? Go kill my enemy, please. Like, it's very clear, and a part of worship is this idea of lament. So thank you all both for sharing that. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, and as I alluded to at the beginning, this is a holy time. I felt that even as we were preparing for this, that these were the stories that we needed to be told today, but it is not at the expense of knowing that there are stories sitting in these chairs. And I'd love for you all, as we're ending, if you could, what would be some advice you would give folks that are here today that are desiring to trust God, even right now, where parts of their lives feel chaotic, they feel out of control, they don't know what the future looks like? What would be a word of encouragement you have for these folks here today?
One of the books we read in this leadership development group was by Peter Lord, called Hearing God. And he said, any mental attack on your self-worth does not come from the Father. He will correct your behavior, but he never condemns your worth. It is the enemy who sends all such thoughts as I'm no good, I'll never amount to anything, I'm a failure, I'm a nobody, and I'm not important. And when you're in the middle of that darkness and you're like, I was losing money, I was overwhelmed, I was scared, I was thinking like, okay, this is only going in a bad direction. But James says like, we don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. So that's like an evil and a dark path that I'm going down. But Romans 12:2, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you to a new person by changing the way you think. Then you'll learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. And so I'd say like it's, again, those daily habits really matter. Are you going to the Lord in prayer every morning? Are you reading the Bible? Are you pouring in the wisdom of the Bible and God into your hearts? Or, maybe like I was doing before, I'm waking up a little tired, I'm going to put that off because maybe my head hurts. Yeah.
I would just continually encourage, honestly, lament. I know it's become a theme, but the honesty before God, I think, is something really powerful. And honesty also with each other. So your close circle of people, whoever that is, family or friends, it is a vulnerable thing to let people in on the hardest elements of your life and what you really need prayer for. But it's also such a healing thing when you see people continually checking in on you who deeply care and who will pray over you, and for witnessing God answering those prayers. And that's probably been one of the sweeter parts of this journey for me. And there are redemptive elements to, I've seen people's prayers answered. Like, I will quickly share this one thing that, alderman, I thought it was going to be a leap for my career. I thought it was going to be, this is the trajectory I'm going to hit. And it wasn't that. It was not directly that. But it also was my introduction to my husband. So Michael, my colleague, was the one who introduced me to Michael. So it's just interesting how God works mysteriously, how I would never have thought that's how I would have met my husband, through work. But that's just a way that God works mysteriously, and he surprises you. So if you let your honest prayers come before God, you will see him work. And you get a glimpse of that through prayer.
The Bible says many are the plans in a person's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails. And we often pray, God, should I take path A or path B? But what I've found along this journey is that he says, you pick the path. You have the autonomy to do that, but don't forget my presence. Walk with me and we'll get through whatever is ahead together. And that's what I've learned. Trust isn't about having control. It's about having company with Jesus and with others who are willing to walk with you.
Can we give it up for these amazing people? Thank you for being here. Let me pray for us as we send you back out. Lord, thank you for this time that you met us. Lord, I thank you that you do meet us in our quiet times and on Sunday. But Lord, as we talked about today, that I'm so thankful that you meet us in our car when we're mad and upset and grieving, that you meet us when things feel out of our control and things happen that we weren't expecting. You meet us when our businesses are failing and we're sitting in a Nordstrom. That you meet us in all of these places, that you're not far from us, but you promise to be near. And we thank you, God, that you will, as has been said today, that the promise that you will never leave us or forsake us. That you know how many hairs are on our heads, so you know what's going on in our heart. And so, Lord, we're going to hold you to these promises. And I pray for each person in this room and all the things that are on their plate moving forward for the rest of the day, the things they're excited about, the things they're not excited about, the things that they know are coming, and the unplanned things that you have for them. Lord, I pray that they would feel your presence, that you are ahead of them, behind them, and with them right now. And may you bless them in their vocations, in their work, and in their families. It's your name we pray. Amen. Thanks so much for being here, y'all.